Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Now, we're going to do a couple different things today. We're going to be looking at a couple of Fringe episodes from the TV series Fringe, and then we're going to get into just a few headlines, so it's going to be kind of a two-part show. But back in 2011, there was a show called Fringe, and it was airing its third season. So today we're going to look at episodes 11 through 13, and I put them together in a montage. And we're going to look at the pre-programming that they were seeding into the world consciousness in preparation for the spam-demic. Now, it was one of you who pointed out to me these specific episodes to look at. I think the person in the comments even provided timestamps for us to take a look at. And you saw some clues in there, and so many of those clues that you saw we're going to put in this decode today. But basically, let me give you the backdrop of what we're going to look at today. Episode 11 features this spike protein. And you're going to watch this character, Astrid is her name in the series. She walks in front of the spike protein and eclipses it. Let's watch this. There it is right there. And I zoomed it up so you could see it.
You okay?
It's strange, but at moments when I'm with PB, I find myself forgetting what I'm here for.
So, I'm not going to get too deep into the plot of this series because it can get very, very confusing. There's several different timelines, there's doubles or doppelgangers, alternate universes, and it can get really, really confusing. So, we're going to kind of take the 30,000 foot view here as we look at some of the symbolism in the series Fringe. Remember, this is third season, 2011. And what you're going to see here are basic themes of smaxine bioweapons and DNA. And of course, blue blood in the temple. Watch.
Dr. Warren Blake was noted for his recent work in vaccinating thousands of people in underdeveloped countries.
Now, this Dr. Blake, as you just heard, he was responsible for smaxinating lots of people in foreign countries. Well, Dr. Blake, as you're going to see in a second here, he had another pastime. And his other favorite pastime was secret military research, in which he was testing a bioweapon that turns bones, human bones within the human body into ash instantaneously. Now, he also developed a delivery system to smaxinate people without their knowledge. Let's watch. Now, this is Dr. Blake, and what ends up happening here is there were some of his human test subjects who were infected and then cured, but then they found out later that their children didn't get the cure. So their children died in utero as their bones dissolved while they were still in the womb. So what these super soldiers decide to do is vow revenge on this doctor and all the corporations and companies that developed this, bioweapon. And so they send them these booby trap packages laced with the bone dissolving bioweapon. It appears as a toy, but then when you pull the string, out comes the powder, and you'll see what happens next. So he gets dosed and his bones basically dissolve inside of his body. This is the first victim, was this doctor, remember, responsible for smaxines in foreign countries, right? Let's keep watching here.
Thank you.
Now, the Fringe team basically starts to try to track down these super soldiers that are taking out these scientists with the bioweapon. And so they have to basically backtrack to see where these packages came from. And what you're going to notice here is the post office aspect to all of this, to the delivery of the bioweapon. They send it through packages in the post office. Now, all this should start to sound familiar because in our current reality, we're starting to see involvement of the post office. We just found out that the post office was involved in a secret program to monitor and watch people like us online. I forget the name of that program, but it was called ICOP. That is what it was called. And to date, nothing's been done about that secret program. You know, we don't hear Rand Paul going off on ICOP. Okay, so something is wrong here. Something is going on with the post office. They have a lot more power than you can imagine. Of course, we've had the anthrax and how all of that was supposedly delivered through the post office as well back in the 2000s. Let's keep watching here.
Broyles tracked the postal code. The package was sent from Chelsea 2 days ago, so I'm just downloading the post office security footage.
Good thing lunatics still use the postal service.
Well, that makes 2 breakthroughs.
Good thing lunatics still use the postal service.
Billy and I worked on a similar technique in the 70s when we were trying to find a way to vaccinate people without their knowledge. And Tricky Dicky tried to use our research people without their knowledge. To vaccinate people without their knowledge. And Tricky Dicky tried to use our research to develop biological weapons.
So there they pretty much tell you right there. Here you're going to hear the story of the super soldiers' wives who were pregnant with the children and their bones dissolved.
Something wrong with Aaron. Some DNA pathogen that he passed on to our child.
Notice the DNA component to it.
7 months into the pregnancy, our baby died. Something to do with his time overseas. He kept talking about a weapons project. That he must have been exposed to something.
So, for the super soldiers' final, attack on the scientists who developed this and caused their children to die, they map it all out in this hideout. And look at the map of the hideout. Now, this map is actually a map of the ballroom floor with stairs around it, but we know what this is really representing, don't we? It's another spike protein with 6 barrels in it, representing the 6, canisters that they were going to release from their vest and take out the entire ballroom of people, of scientists that harmed their children. Watch.
Looks like a map of their next target, right?
A map of their next target, which we all know what they were really talking about. The next target is Vidco.
Maybe an overhead view?
Done.
We've cleared 62.237% of people who could possibly have been exposed. That's enough to make a statistical inference. This is not an epidemic.
Now, that brings us to the very next episode. This is episode 12 of season 3. And so we're watching these episodes in continuum so that you can see the setup and the pattern and the theme all connected together. That these are not 3 separate episodes, but they're one episode talking all about the same thing, which was the future of Vidco and the Pokemon stickers, the smack scenes, and everything else. So, again, the same theme in this episode 12 is about outbreaks and pathogens. Now, in this episode, Fringe is tracking down a mad scientist. And the mad scientist is using cockroaches to basically use human people as hosts to develop his smack scene. So again, once again, the smack scenes are the theme. Watch.
We're not dealing with an outbreak.
If the enzyme is present, the indicator will turn pink. Come on.
Now, if you didn't know by now, cockroaches have hemocyanin-based blood. Blue bloods, copper-based blood. And copper turns out blue, and as you just saw in the clip here, he says it's either the result of his test is either going to come out pink or blue. What do you think that means? Well, humans, of course, have red blood, iron-based blood, right? Now, what happens is these cockroaches infest the human host from the inside out. So this is more of the same, the blue blood body snatchers, the blue blood in the temple. Pink or blue.
Have you heard of Watson and Crick?
They're
those DNA guys, right?
Do you know the name Jonas Salk?
Well, sure, who doesn't? He cured polio.
So there you just heard them reveal how smack scenes and DNA are very closely interlinked with one another. As he mentioned, both polio and DNA in the same conversation with this man. So this mad scientist, he keeps dosing these unsuspecting victims. In this case, it was the guy he was just talking to in the restaurant, and he uses them as human incubators for his cockroaches. Now, this next part, they're going to have a discussion that explains that these roaches used to live in sheep in this alternate universe. Okay, they used to live in sheep, but what happened was all the sheep went extinct along with the cockroaches. So the scientists had to use human subjects instead.
Claims he was close to a vaccine for the avian flu. The vaccine was based on an enzyme that the skelter beetle produced. But the real problem would be that the eggs had never hatched.
Because they only live in sheep.
Exactly. He'd have to modify them. He'd have to re-engineer them to live in a different host.
Like people.
He'd have to clone DNA from a preserved specimen. Sheep and humans share 96% of the same DNA. And that could account for the reason why the bugs are killing their human hosts.
How many did Salk sacrifice trying to get his answers?
Pasteur, in the name of science.
Is that what you're talking about? Your vaccine?
Humans were my only option. When the sheep died out, I tried. Cows, goats, primates, none of them could host the beetles.
For someone who wants to save lives, you sure don't have much of a problem killing people.
For someone who wants to save lives, you sure don't have a problem killing people. Does this sound familiar?
Can you zoom in?
What do you see, Fringe?
I see movement.
What?
The picture on the sonogram?
Uh-huh.
You're not infected. You're pregnant.
Now, I had to think about this scene for a little while to figure out what was really going on here, because Detective Dunham, the lady you see laying there getting the sonogram, she thought that the mad scientist had infected her as his final test subject. But actually, she finds out in the ambulance that she's pregnant. And when I thought about this and prayed about it, I thought to myself, what is really being spoken here? Now, a lot of these revelations that come to me to put the puzzle pieces together happen in my sleep. It's kind of annoying because I have to wake up and write these things down or type them into my phone, because otherwise when I wake up, I'll forget what was revealed. This is one of the things that was revealed. I've got some other things to share with you too on iPet Go 2 that was revealed to me last night as well. And we'll do that at the end of the show. But basically, what this represents here is the war against the seed of the woman by the serpent, the counterfeit pregnancy. Let's keep watching here. So, it wasn't Dunham who got the final dose. It was the mad scientist. And here you see that the cockroach had just crawled out of his neck. And what does he release it into? A hexagramic cube. The matrix cube birth. The hex, opposed to the natural womb birth. Let's look. So he releases this cockroach into the cube. This is the mother cockroach, the final genetically modified cockroach that will provide him with his smack scene. So now you're beginning to see this persistent theme of blue blood opposing the red blood. The unnatural versus the natural. So, now, as we transition over into some of these headlines, I wanted to originally open the show with another Deef code. I was supposed to do Moonfall today. Many of you are probably looking forward to that. I was going to present that today, I'm a little nervous about showing that because it just released in the theaters, and sometimes, especially foreign films, you can catch a copyright on that. So I got to be careful. I want to protect this channel, and I'm willing to wait a few weeks to do that. We may do it tomorrow, but we may not. But I want to get into some of these headlines, and then we'll finish the show with, I Pet Goat 2, and some things that were revealed to me last night. Now, this is crazy. We're seeing more and more of these kinds of stories. These deer that are both sexes. Hunters think that they're taking out a buck, and then they look and they find that it's a female with antlers, which isn't normal. Apparently it's happened and it's rare, but we're seeing more and more of these kinds of stories popping up, and you got to ask yourself, what is the deal with this? I mean, we were just told, they've just been pumping it up in the news, that these deer are infected with vidco, and that we would never be able to get rid of vidco because the reservoir for infections has spread into the animal population, specifically deers, and they will just keep reinfecting us. And now they're telling us that the deer are becoming androgynous. This doesn't make any sense. So I'm wondering, deer have often been synonymous with humanity. I wonder if this is what's in store for us. And I wonder what the connection is to other things that are happening right now. Now let's get into another topic, and that is fentanyl overdoses. Now, this has become an epidemic across the country. In my news feed, I'm getting stories of 2 fentanyl overdoses within the last month in schools. One was in a middle school, one was in a high school. Here's a 16-year-old student at a high school overdosed. This child would have died if it wasn't for them giving the child Narcan immediately. And here's another one, I guess, that happened. Actually, they mentioned the other one that happened in a middle school as well, just last month. So something is not right with this. Now, here's the thing. We live in an era of digital surveillance, don't we? Especially if you think about the confines of a city, large city. And we know there are cameras everywhere, and when they want to, they can pick out a person who's acting suspicious in an entire crowd. We've seen it happen before. Police all show up. The guy was just pulling his phone out of his pocket. Anyway, they could end this side of drug use tomorrow if they wanted to. Now, I'm not suggesting we give up our privacy so that dangerous drugs can be eradicated. What I'm trying to point out here is the hypocrisy. We get bombarded with this messaging of drugs, right? How dangerous it is. But then, the powers that be have the power to change that, but they don't. If they were smart, and they really wanted us to accept a surveillance state, they would start by eradicating drugs, wouldn't they? And then at least people would feel like they were getting a benefit from it. And I'm not talking about what they consider to be drugs. So I don't consider all things that they consider to be drugs, okay? What I'm saying is, if they were smart, that's what they would do. But there's a reason why they're not truly fighting drugs. There's a reason for it. And there's a reason why they've criminalized it to where they make money off of you by putting you into the criminal system. That's what it's all about. It's all about deepening the coffers of the criminal industrial complex, taking more of your money. It's almost like a tax. Look at it like a drug tax. So they let you do it, but then when you get caught, you just got taxed. You got to go to court, hire an attorney. You might do some time and pay all these fees and all restitution and everything else. There's a reason why they won't do away with it completely, because they need that complex, because it's worth billions of dollars. Billions of dollars are spent fighting drugs. Billions of dollars are made in the court system through fines and taxes and all these other things. And that's what's really going on here. Now, stories like this are just very sad. HHS is handing out crack pipes. Need a crack pipe? Just call up the HHS. Handing them out for free to underserved communities. Basically, this is a form of population control, in my opinion. Does this make any sense to you? Let's read this one. HHS department is rolling out $30 million grant that will fund the distribution of items like crack pipes for smoking illicit substances. Washington Free Beacon initially reported on the program, noting that the department would prioritize applicants in underserved communities. This is doublespeak for, oh, we'll just get rid of the people that we don't really want to deal with. Biden's executive orders. Wow. So Biden's in the business of population control. HHS spokesperson reportedly told the Beacon that the grants would fund smoking kits with pipes for users to smoke crystal meth, crack cocaine. Unbelievable. So this is how they want to help black communities. They call it racial equity. See how they flip the script? See how they can tell you right to your face that they're helping you, but really they're doing the opposite. They're destroying you. People in these communities understand how bad these kinds of drugs are. Okay? I have personal experience with this with my brother. And he breaks my mother's heart every single day. Just thinking about the life he is living and has been living for decades and the things that he's put his family through. And worrying about him. As a parent, that's the last thing you want. Now, do you think my mother would think it'd be a good idea for him just to walk up and get a free pipe? Of course not. This shows how out of touch these people are with everything. So, it's all opposites. What they're really doing is going, you know what? We don't want to deal with these people. Let's just give them the tools they need to tie their own rope. That's what they're really doing. If you really want to think about it. Now, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going to pull up iPet Go 2. I'm looking for the opening scene. This is the one we want right here. Now, I want to see those smokestacks. Everything's smoking in iPet Go 2, isn't it? Let's put opening here. Goat crate. Well, here's the actual scene here. Now, the thing that was revealed to me last night with this scene, let's try to make this bigger so you guys can see this. Was the Electric Kingdom. Now, this goat is in a crate. It's surrounded by an electric fence. And we all knew that, but what we didn't put together was that this is the Electric Kingdom. Why do we say that? Well, upwards of 60% of electricity created in America comes from fossil fuels. Comes from gas, methane, coal. Very little of it comes from wind and solar. So in effect, they have basically increased the electricity use with these electric fences that we will all once be put in. And the irony of it is that they will then consolidate all of that natural gas that we're using to create their own pollution. So they basically get to be the ones that get to pollute, taking away our ability to be self-independent. And then they will use that electricity to then enslave us. These are stadium lights. They use a lot of electricity. Another thing that was revealed to me was the reason why this is a goat in the crate. The reason why this is a goat in the crate is because it was turned into a goat because it used to be a sheep. Because it took the mark. Once you take the mark, you become a goat. Those are the ones that will be imprisoned in the end. Those who took the mark. Wow. Now I've got one last story for you guys. And this story actually kind of dovetails. I think this is the story here. It must have switched on us. Here it is. This is out of the BBC. Now this dovetails into some recent stories that we've been doing on Arctic mold. Mold found deep within the earth. We've seen this theme over and over again with the X-Files and the super deep borehole movie that we decoded a couple weeks ago. And they want us to believe there's this alien matter cruising around in the ocean, right? Well, scientists are now claiming to have made a discovery of an alien-like organism that basically thrives on ancient dead matter in the Arctic deep. It's supposedly a sponge that feeds on dead worms. Now, they say these sponges are about 3 feet long and 300 years old. There's your 33 again, right? And they basically get into rising sea levels and all that stuff, of course, global warming. I don't know how they tie it into these ancient worms or these sponges, but interesting nonetheless. I think there's some other pictures in here of this thing, and it kind of looks like mold. To me, it did anyway. See if we can get some pictures of this thing. It's like they pulled them from the article. Here it is here. So look at this. It's kind of like those mold spores we were talking about, doesn't it? Ancient sponges feeding on ancient materials, 300 years old. Really weird. Looks exactly like some of the stuff we've been covering in these films. So, what's up with global warming? Well, we're going to do a little experiment. I'm going to come back into the chat with you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. What I want you to do after you leave the show today is this little experiment. I want you to grab your favorite giant glass out of the cabinet. You know, the one that you probably either fill up with beer or a giant soda when you're in the mood for that. A nice wide-rimmed glass. And then I want you to fill it, the entire thing, as much as you can get in there with ice. But don't fill it too much to where the ice is peeking out of the top. Just fill it up to the level of the cup, the top of the cup. Then I want you to fill the glass with water. Fill it all the way to the top, but fill it to where the ice doesn't go above the top of the cup. So in other words, you have a very full glass of ice water. Now, I want you to set that glass on top of a bowl. And the only reason why we're going to do that is so you can see that no water spilled over the top of it, okay? I don't want you to go look in there and not be able to see if the water spilled, because this is an experiment, right? And then I want you to set it out and just wait for it to melt. Now, it should melt completely within, 6 or 7 hours, maybe, depending on how warm your house is. But when it's done melting, I want you to come back to this video and leave a comment in the comment section and tell us what happened to the glass of ice. Now, you're going to get some condensation on the cup, so whatever could be spilling, you have to account for that. I don't know, maybe, well, we can't really wrap a paper towel around it because that would... But what you're going to notice is that the water level in the cup does not change. It stays exactly the same, regardless of whether or not there's ice in there or not, whether or not it's melted or frozen. Now, one of you was the one that recommended this little experiment in the comment section, and that's why I read it, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. Because this goes to show that it doesn't matter if ice is frozen or not frozen. It doesn't affect the level of the water. At least I don't think it does. You guys will have to do the experiment and let me know what you think is going on. So, that's pretty much all I had for you guys today. And let's go into the chat for a little bit. Yeah, you're probably going to get a lot of condensation. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I'm wondering how we could get around that condensation, because condensation is going to pool at the bottom of the cup and make it look like it overflowed when it really didn't. Another idea is to maybe fill up the water halfway and mark the water level. That's what we can do. Fill the cup up halfway and mark the level of water with the ice in it, and then come back and see if that level went higher in the cup. That way, whatever condensation forms on the outside of the cup it's not going to trick us and make us believe it overflowed. So in other words, don't overflow the cup. So I'm interested to see what you guys come up with. Yeah, the condensation draws water from the air. Okay. When you freeze something, it actually takes up more space. It's almost the opposite effect. When you freeze something, it takes up more space. Think about this. When you go to freeze like a bottled water, it almost always explodes. So that takes up more space than it would. So when it freezes, it takes up less space. So you would think that the levels would go down. It's like just the opposite of what they tell us happens. So, okay. Much love to you guys. I love each and every one of you. This was a short show today, but I just had a few things to report. We'll be back on her tomorrow, and maybe we'll do that Moonfall decode. I know a lot of you are looking forward to that. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Much love. Take care and be safe, you guys.